Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
This is True Crime Cast. Jamie and John here with another case. What's up, big guy?
Not a whole lot, man. What's going on over there?
Okay, if I call you big guy?
You can call me big guy.
Big guy. We are glad you guys are here with us as we get August started. We actually posted a Patreon episode over the weekend. It was a really fascinating case that happened in Kentucky back in the 90s.
It was about a child that got hurt. And I think the most surprising thing about that case is the fact that Jamie was the one who recommended it and
Usually
brought
not my
it to
thing.
our attention.
Yeah, I think the locality of it and some good news coming out of it really overtook my, my tendency to avoid child cases. But you can check that out over on Patreon for just $3 a month. You can hear a backlog of all of our special episodes.
I want to say thank you to a few Patreon members, Justin, Haley. Really appreciate you guys coming in at the $3 level. And then Patrick, we may have said your name before, but I just saw that I need to send you an autograph. So I'm going to be putting that in the mail this week.
There you go, Patrick. Couple more thank yous and we will get going. These are 5-star reviews that came in over on Apple Podcasts. This one comes from Amazing Book. I loved it. That's the name. Not a book, but we'll take it. It says, absolute favorite. I found this podcast a few years ago, and I mean a few. I was in love with this podcast from the beginning. I have been on and off with the Patreon, but seriously, if you can join the Patreon, do it. You will not regret it. You guys tell every story respectfully and perfectly. Thank you guys for everything you do. That was not a Patreon plug from us. So thank you from Amazing Book. I loved it.
I love Amazing Book. Thank you. And I do love an amazing book.
This comes from T-Seeb, T-E-C-E-E-B. Says, I started listening in April 2023 and started trying to catch up. Jamie and John are a great duo, and they bring interesting cases each week. I can't wait till the next one comes out. So thank you, T-Seeb. We appreciate your 5-star review. And if you want to leave one as well, we will read it here on the show.
All right, man. We have an interesting case. We're going to be talking about maybe the first ever mass murderer in the U.S. Is that?
Oh, I mean, it depends on how you define it. I mean, it's certainly something that we didn't talk about when this happened. So at the time, it was huge news, and we don't get into a lot of these. So this is a bit of a unique case for us. Why don't you just get us rolling?
Today, we are going to be talking about the first person in the U.S. to be called a mass murderer. His name, Richard Benjamin Speck. He was born in Kirkwood, Illinois in 1941. Jamie, just seeing the name Speck, I always, for some reason, just want to say Spock from Star Wars or Star Trek. So
live long and prosper.
He was the 7th of 8 children belonging to Benjamin Franklin Speck and Mary Margaret Speck. Shortly after he was born, the family moved to Monmouth, Illinois.
Monmouth. But I just want you to stop. You're just going to squeak by the fact that his dad was named Ben Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great name.
Okay.
That's a great patriotic name. His dad, I want to know his grandparents' names. Were they George Washington Franklin? I don't know. But the time frame that he grew up, that was not uncommon. This was right at the beginning of the World War II, so very patriotic time. His sister Carolyn was born 2 years later, making them much closer in age than their 4 older siblings. Speck's mother was a very religious woman. She was a teetotaler, someone who would not drink alcohol, and even above that would not allow it in her home. His father worked as a packer at the Western Stoneware. In 1947, when Speck was only 6 years old, his dad died of a heart attack when he was only age 53. So this was really tough on Speck. He, by all accounts, was very close to his father.
Obviously, whenever we bring up somebody who leads a life like Richard Speck is going to, it usually starts out with some sort of trauma. A lot of times that is in the form of abuse and other things, and in this case, I think it really starts with this loss. He was so close to his dad, and I mean, losing a parent is never a good time, but it certainly impacts you different ways at different times of your life. In 1950, 3 years after his dad had passed away, Speck's mom married a man named Carl Lindbergh in Palo Pinto, Texas. They met on a train ride to Chicago. Lindbergh was a traveling insurance salesman with a 25-year criminal record, including DUIs. He was a hard drinker, he was an alcoholic, and he was really tough on the kids. Now, we don't have a lot of documented cases of physical abuse. He was never arrested or charged with anything here, but due to stories from the family, he was very hard on the kids, much less loving and caregiving than their birth father.
I think it's odd. Yeah, I think he was physically abusive towards Speck, but it's odd to me that this mom would go from someone who would not allow alcohol in her home to now she's married to probably an alcoholic, and it is very much in her home now. So I wonder why the change there.
Yeah, it's certainly a big swing for the entire family. They ended up getting married and moving down to Santo, Texas when Speck was going into third grade. In 1952, Speck's oldest brother, Robert, died in a car accident, which is, again, another big blow to this family and another loss for all these kids.
Starting when he was 19, he would work as a laborer for the 7-Up bottling company. I'm a history nut, and I know this is weird, Jamie, but just go with me. Back in those days, manufacturers for Coca-Cola, 7-Up, Pepsi, all of those, they had little bottling companies all over the U.S. So a lot of small towns, this was a big business for them. They would get the glass bottles, they would put the product in it, and then you would buy it at a local store, drink it, and turn it back in. You would recycle it, so it would go back through the bottling company. When he was 20, he would meet 15-year-old Shirley Annette Malone at the Texas State Fair. After just 3 weeks of dating, Shirley began to show signs of pregnancy, and Speck ended up marrying Shirley on January 19th, 1962. They moved in with Speck's sister, Carolyn, and her husband. Their mother also lived there as she had separated from Lindbergh. Speck and Shirley had their daughter. Her name was Robbie Lynn Speck, and she was born on July 5th, 1962. When she was born, Speck was in jail. He was serving a 22-day sentence for disturbing the peace during a drunken fight in McKinney, Texas. Their home was not exactly a happy one. Speck often raped and beat Shirley at knife point and was abusive towards his mother-in-law. Not a good situation, and now we see Speck turning into kind of a carbon copy of what his stepdad was, but probably ramped up a little bit.
And I mean, not to gloss over the fact that he got her pregnant at 15 when he was 20. That would be, I don't know, maybe a huge scandal now. At that time, it was a scandal in some parts of the country to get pregnant before you were married. But
that would have been the biggest scandal of that whole situation.
Yeah, the age gap was not looked at the same way as it is now.
Now it's statutory rape.
As it should be,
absolutely.
To be clear.
But back then it was different. A lot of parents would give consent for 15-year-olds to get married back then. So, yeah.
No, I fully agree. And that's what you had to do. And I know people who would drive to different states because the different states had different age limits on that. All that to say, this relationship was not on the up and up from the jump. In 1963, Speck forged and cashed a coworker's check for $44. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's close to $500 today. So that's a decent paycheck that he's stealing. At that same time, he robbed a grocery store, taking cigarettes, beer, and a small amount of cash. He was convicted of forgery and burglary, and he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He got out in 1965 after serving less than 2 years, and he robbed a woman at knife point almost immediately and went right back for a 15-month sentence for aggravated assault and parole violation. John, we have him stealing cigarettes and beer and getting 3 years, and then robbing a woman at knife point and getting 15 months. Am I wrong that this doesn't make sense?
No, man, absolutely. We say it all the time when we talk about these people who just hurt people over and over and over, is that the system has failed so many innocent victims. The perpetrators are out there doing this stuff, and the system is not holding them accountable.
The system said, you robbed this woman at knife point, you get 6 or 15 months in prison for that. But there was a clerical error, which is always great news. And he was released just 6 months into that sentence. So this violent criminal out of prison, back in prison, and right back out. And obviously he felt no need to slow down. When he did get out, though, Shirley finally filed for divorce in 1966. And this was the same month when he got in a bar fight and stabbed somebody. Due to this, he was charged with aggravated assaults, but the defense attorney that his mom hired got the charge reduced to disturbing the peace. He was given a $10 fine for stabbing a guy in a bar and was put in jail for 3 days. That fine's probably around $99 today. And, John, that's not, again, this is his second violent offense, but like his fifth offense, and we're giving him a $100 fine and sending him to jail for 3 days. The justice system is not doing its job here. And it's becoming clear that he wasn't going to get any better of a life where he was. So he moved on up out of Texas. On March 9th of 1966, after robbing a grocery store, his sister drove him to the bus stop, and he was going to be moving to Chicago to move in with Carolyn.
Yeah, after a few days in Chicago, he went back to his boyhood hometown of Monmouth. He stayed with some old family friends while he was there. His brother helped him get a job. They were going to be sanding plasterboard for a carpenter. Plasterboard, basically the predecessor of modern-day drywall. Let me just tell you, that is not a glamorous job. It, in fact, is terrible. After finding out that his ex-wife remarried 2 days after their divorce was finalized, Speck began spending more of his free time in the bars and taverns in town. He was not taking this very well. On April 3rd, 1966, just a month after moving to Illinois, Speck was in trouble again. 65-year-old Virgil Harris came back home to find a man believed to be Speck holding a knife and robbing her home. So the man blindfolded her, tied her up, raped her, tore through the house, and stole $2.50 that she had earned that night for babysitting. 1 week later, Mary Catherine Pierce, this was a 32-year-old barmaid who worked at a tavern called Frank's Place in Monmouth, disappeared. She was last seen at 12:20 a.m. on April the 9th at the tavern. She was reported missing on April 13th, and Mary Catherine's body was found that day in an empty hog house behind the tavern. She died from a blow to the stomach that ruptured her liver.
Yeah, that's a really different way to die. Usually when we talk about people being victims of violent crime, it's not usually something like that, where it's just a one blow to the abdomen. Speck was a regular at Frank's Place, and he even helped build the hog house out back the month before Mary Catherine was murdered, so he was familiar with the hog house. When Speck went to pick up his paycheck, police were at the place and questioned him about the murder. They told him not to leave town because they might have more questions. At this point, he was a person of interest. 4 days later, they showed up to his hotel room, and he was gone. They searched his room and found a radio, and they found some jewelry that belonged to Miss Virgil Harris. They also found items reportedly stolen in 2 other burglaries in town the month before. Speck ran away to his sister Martha's house in Chicago, where she lived with her husband and their 2 teenage daughters. He told the family that he had to leave Monmouth because he refused to sell narcotics for a crime organization there when, as we know, he was actually in need to leave Monmouth because he was wanted for murder. That week, Martha's husband, Gene, took Speck to the U.S. Coast Guard office to apply for a letter of authority to work as an apprentice seaman. Speck found work almost immediately after getting his letter. But on his first assignment, he got appendicitis and had to be flown by helicopter to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. So you have to wonder, if he had been able to keep this assignment with the Coast Guard, could that have given him a chance to turn his life around?
Or maybe just learn new skills to be utilized in evil ways. I'm the ever the pessimist, Jamie. Sorry. So while he was recovering, he stayed with Martha and her family. On May 20th, 1966, he got another assignment, but that one only lasted a month because Speck would get into a drunken fight with one of the ship's officers. If you're going to get in a fight on a ship, make it with the other enlisted men. Don't fight an officer. That never ends well. So he had run out of luck. He was also having a hard time finding other jobs. He was really wearing out his welcome at his sister's house by the end of July that same year. On July the 11th, Gene drove Speck to the National Maritime Union hiring hall and dropped him off with his bags. So it was basically, good luck. I'm dropping you off somewhere where you can get a job and take care of yourself. You're on your own now. And that's, it sucks, but that's not a bad thing to do if, you've got your own family that you got to look out for. So he found a room nearby for sailors waiting on assignments. On July 12th, Speck went back to the hiring hall. He was given an assignment 30 minutes away. But when he arrived for duty, he found out that there was a mistake and the job had already been taken. So he was driving back to the hiring hall, which was closed. He didn't have money for a room, so he dropped his bags off at a gas station and he slept in an unfinished house. The next morning, he picked up his bags and went back to the hiring hall. He was still pretty angry about being sent to the assignment that had already been taken, and he was getting frustrated with not being assigned to a job in general. He spent the rest of the day of July 13th drinking in a tavern near the room that his sister had paid for. It was in the bars that he met 53-year-old Ella Mae Hopper. 24-year-old Speck took her back to his hotel room. He would rape her and then steal what money she had. When he was done, he fled the room with a knife and a gun, hoping to keep burglarizing and robbing other rooms and other victims. So that's what led to one of the worst mass murders in Chicago history. So, Jamie, let's take a break, and when we get back, you can pick up where he's going to start this awful spree.
Obviously, Speck's life is not heading in a direction that he enjoys, and he has committed at this point essentially to do whatever it takes for him to get what he thinks he wants by any means necessary. He would pry open a screen door on the back of a townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street in Chicago. This townhouse was the home of 9 unsuspecting nursing students. When Speck entered the home, 7 of the students were home. He pulled out a gun and ordered the young women to sit down, and he used bed sheets to gag them and tie their hands and feet together. He told them he wasn't going to hurt him, that he just wanted to rob the place. While tying up the nurse named Pam Wilkening, she spit in his face and told him that she would pick his face out in a lineup and he wasn't going to get away with this. That's when Speck seemed to snap. He grabbed Pam, dragged her into a bedroom, and stabbed her through the heart. She died on the spot. After killing Pam and coming back into the room of women, roommates Marianne Jordan and Suzanne Ferris came home from being out on dates. Remember, 7 were there when he came in. The other 2 came into the home in the middle of all this. They surprised Speck and tried to overpower him to try to save everybody. Speck, who was holding a knife, stabbed Suzanne 18 times and stabbed Marianne 5 times, killing both in the hallway. He killed 3 women at this point and he decided he was just going to kill them all in order to make sure there were no witnesses and nobody that could identify him. One by one, he moved to the women and took them into separate rooms where he stabbed them to death. When he got to the last victim, Gloria Davy, instead of stabbing her, Speck strangled her after raping her. There was approximately 20 to 30 minutes between each murder. So for the 9 individuals, this took several hours. By the end of the night, he had brutally murdered 20-year-old Pamela Wilkening, 24-year-old Nina Jo Schmel, 24-year-old Valentina Pezon, 20-year-old Patricia Matisek, 20-year-old Marianne Jordan, 21-year-old Suzanne Ferris, 23-year-old Marita Garguglio, and 22-year-old Gloria Davy. They were all just 1 month away from graduating and becoming nurses. Valienta Paisan and Marita Garguglio were exchange students from the Philippines.
So you didn't mention a name, and that's because I don't think Speck knew she was there. There was one survivor. Corazon Amurao was another Filipina exchange student that had crawled under a bed and hid there while Speck was out of the room. So she was able to stay hidden under the bed while all the other girls were brutally killed, and she stayed there until 6 a.m. that morning. After Speck left, she had waited a little while and then climbed out onto the ledge outside the townhouse and started screaming. She would scream the words, "They're all dead. My friends are all dead. Oh my God, I am the only one alive." This is one of the worst things we've ever talked about. I mean, if we really let our brains go there, I mean, this guy is evil, and to save her life, she had to hide under a bed and just hear everything that was going on.
And you have to think about her staying under that bed. And after he murders one of her friends, she sits there for roughly 20 to 30 minutes, hoping that he's done before hearing it again. And in her head, she's got a countdown going, I'm sure, of how many of my friends are left.
Yeah.
This is torture above just about anything we've ever talked about, aside from physical torture.
The morning of July 14th, 1966, police, detectives, prosecutors, and more went to the townhouse. There were bodies that were everywhere, strewn throughout the townhouse. There was blood literally everywhere. There were fingerprints at the scene, and they were a match to the criminal Richard Speck, because he had been in and out of jail a lot, never for long enough. Victims were removed one at a time. After masses were held in their honor in Chicago, the bodies of several of them were sent back to their families in the Philippines. By 8:45 in the morning after the murder, a detective questioned a nearby gas station attendant who told him that there was this guy. He was a poor guy coming in. He would stay, but he would check his suitcases in and would go somewhere else to stay. But then he said something about being a seaman. So, of course, this is going to point back to Speck. We know that he was staying in that unfinished house. He would put his suitcases and stuff in the gas station. So this guy was a major help. So that led the detective to the hiring hall, where a steward recognized the composite sketch of the murderer. The detective said that he was looking for the assignment slip and went to a wastebasket and pulled out the assignment slip, and there was only one name on there, and that was Richard Franklin Speck.
Yeah, John, I want to go back to the composite sketch a little bit. We were talking during our Patreon episode about how useful these things end up being in almost every case. Is it always identical to the person we're looking for? No. But is it much more accurate than it probably should be? It seems to be, and it was a big help here as well.
We always talk about how unreliable and sometimes inaccurate the first, eyewitnesses' testimony can be, but it is amazing how much detail a composite artist can get from these folks and just make it look just like these people. It's really crazy.
While they were doing all this investigation, though, Richard Speck was asleep in his room at the Shipyard Inn, less than a mile from the townhouse, sleeping away, which, they say that if you put somebody in a jail cell and hold them after they know they're suspected of a crime, if they know they're guilty, they'll sleep because they know they're caught. And if they're not, they will stay awake trying to figure out how to prove they're innocent. And that checks out here. He got up at 11 a.m. and decided to move to a room further north, the Star Hotel. He used an alias to check in there, and he drank on the fire escape the night of July 15th with another guest, a drifter named Claude Lunsford. The next morning, on July 16th, Lunsford recognized the sketch of the murder in the paper as the man that he had been drinking with the night before. So he called police to report this, but as far as we know, they never responded to Lunsford's call. That same night, Speck attempted suicide by cutting his wrists in the bathroom. The clerk at the Star Hotel desk called in an emergency around midnight to come and check on him. While Speck was at the hospital, a resident recognized him from the tattoo that Speck had that had been described on the paper that had the sketch on it saying, "This is the person we're looking for." So he called the police and said, "There's a patient here matching the description with the tattoo listed. Please come and see if it's him."
A circuit court judge appointed an impartial panel of physicians to determine if Speck was competent enough to stand trial, and his sanity at the time of the crime. They wanted to make sure that he was actually had his wits about him, so to speak. They found him competent and concluded that he was not insane at the time of his killings. While he was waiting for trial, Speck went to sessions with the Cook County jail psychiatrist to try to see if they could figure out what was going on with this guy. This psychiatrist said that Speck had a Madonna prostitute complex. Jamie, this is all news to me, and this is well before the Madonna that we all know and love from the 80s and 90s. So what does this mean?
Yeah, so this is a psychological term that comes from Freud that basically says this is when a man has no sexual desire for somebody they love and respect. So a Madonna would be somebody, a respected partner, your wife, your girlfriend. He's not attracted to those people. He's only attracted to people he doesn't know well enough to have that admiration for.
Yeah, the psychiatrist said the key to understanding the crime was actually his victim, Gloria Davy. So the psychiatrist said, quote, "While I was working with him, I had pictures of all the girls. And when I handed him a picture of Gloria Davies, he jumped out as if I'd put a rattlesnake in his hand. It turned out that Gloria Davy was, as he put it, a dead ringer for his divorced wife, whom he hated," end quote. So this might explain why Gloria was the only one sexually assaulted and why she was also the last one killed. The psychiatrist wrote a discharge summary for Speck that included depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, but also a deep love for his family. He went on to say that Speck saw women as saintly until that he felt they would betray him. After that, that's when he would become aggressive and hostile. The psychiatrist was not called to testify by either side in the trial because the psychiatrist was writing a book about Speck for financial gain. There's so many reasons I don't think we would see this today, but I think HIPAA laws probably have the most to do with that.
I don't know. I feel like everybody's writing a book today, so maybe it would just be like, get in line, bro.
Yeah. So this book would be published in the summer of 1967. If there's anybody who I would like to see testify in this trial, I think hearing the psychiatrist who did multiple sessions with him pretty much towards the top of the list.
It would be so helpful, right? Like that's a key, I think, to understanding why he did this and to going to prove that he knew what he was doing. And his trial started in April of 1967 with a gag order on the press. So the press was either not allowed to come in, or if they did come into the trial, they were not allowed to report on anything until the trial was over. And this is always met with a lot of pushback. We've seen it in a lot of trials recently, and I'm sure it wasn't well received then either. The only survivor, Corazon Amurao, did testify at trial. When asked if she could positively identify the killer of her friend, she stood up, walked directly in front of Speck, and pointed her finger right at him, saying, "This is the man."
That had to be so incredibly hard.
And incredibly powerful for anybody that saw it. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm trying to imagine this scene where the defense isn't objecting to her getting off the stand. But again, it had to be really powerful for the jury to see this. There was also evidence of Speck's fingerprints at the scene, but Speck said he had no recollection of the killings and didn't do it. So that's kind of the crux here. Was he mentally stable enough to know that he was doing this if he did it? Because he's saying, I have no memory of this.
I feel like that's what my kids say when they were little and they would break something on accident. If I don't remember it, I can't be held accountable for it. So I'm just going to plead. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember doing that.
Plead dumb, plead absent.
Yeah.
The trial only lasted 2 days, and the jury only deliberated for 49 minutes. They very quickly found Speck guilty and recommended the death penalty. On June 5th, the judge sentenced Speck to die by the electric chair. On June 28, 1971, the Supreme Court upheld his conviction, but reversed the death sentence because of a legal technicality to do with jury selection. He was resentenced to serve from, I guess the range here is 400 to 1,200 years in prison. So almost enough. Speck was never charged for his crimes against other women. He was never charged for the murder of Mary Catherine back in Chicago. That murder technically is still unsolved. Speck was immediately denied parole every time he came up for parole throughout the 70s, 80s, and up until 1990.
Speck maintained his innocence until he finally confessed to the murders for the first time, and that would happen when he spoke to a journalist named Bob Greene in 1978. He said that he also believed that he had been, wanting to get out of prison and felt like he would do so before the year 2000. And when he got out, he wanted to run his own grocery store. Greene asked him if he ever compared himself to celebrity killers like the likes of John Dillinger. And Speck said, "Me, I'm not like Dillinger or anybody else. I'm freakish," end quote. He told Greene, quote, "I had no feelings at all that night. They said there was blood all over the place. I can't remember. It felt like nothing. I'm sorry as hell. For those girls and for their families and for me, if I had to do it all over again, it would be a simple house burglary," end quote. So, yeah, there's a lot of things you could unpack from that, but I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is he remembers it.
And he always did, I think.
Yeah. Anytime I hear somebody say, "I don't remember it," that's a big red flag, and you do remember it. You just don't want to tell me about it. On December the 5th, 1991, Speck died of a heart attack in Joliet, Illinois. His sister said that she was worried that his grave would be desecrated if they tried to bury him, so the family had him cremated and then spread his ashes in an unknown location. I mean, there's a hell joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to make it.
Yeah, it's low-hanging fruit and probably deserved, but not to come from us. The story doesn't end here. In 1996, Chicago news anchor Bill Curtis, also famous for his role as judge and scorekeeper on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, received videotapes made in the Stateville Correction Center in 1988 while Speck was still in prison there. Curtis created a series out of these tapes called Speck Speaks, but before it aired, he publicly showed the videos to the Illinois State Legislature. He wanted them to see the explicit nature of the activities happening in the prison. There was sex, open drug use, and money being passed around by prisoners. It was its own criminal organization, essentially, and Speck appeared to be having the time of his life. He didn't necessarily need out of prison. He was getting everything he wanted there. At one point, he says to the camera, "If they only knew how much fun I was having, they'd turn me loose." At one point, a voice from off camera asked Speck what kind of drugs he liked. And he said, "Now, coke, reefer, whiskey, wine." And he had access to all these while in prison. In the tape, Richard Speck is seen cutting up and snorting a mountain of cocaine and rolling up piles of marijuana joints. The Illinois House of Representatives Judicial Criminal Committee quickly began hearings on the tape and how it was possible that this could be happening in a maximum security prison. So even after he was gone, Speck is causing problems, and he is, thankfully to this journalist, it's going to bring about some positive change, but we continue to see all of the negative parts of Speck's life.
Yeah, one of the biggest revelations on that tape was really the full conversations that Speck had about the mass murder the night that he murdered all of the student nurses. So on the tape, you can hear an inmate ask Speck, "What are you locked up for?" And he replies, 8 counts of murder. The other inmate asks, "Well, did you kill them?" And he responds, "Sure, I did." That's when the inmate asks, "Why?" And then you can see Speck shrug his shoulders, and he says it just wasn't their night. The conversation goes on for a little bit, and later in the tape, when he's talking about the murders that night, he would say, quote, "I was on acid. One of them spit on me in the face, and she said that she was going to pick me out of a lineup. And that's when I went off and I hit her in the chest with a knife. Then there was 2 more there, so I offed them and wound up trying to kill off all the witnesses," end quote. The inmate asked, "Well, how do you feel after all those killings of the ladies?" And that's when he responded, quote, "Like I always felt. I have no feeling. If you're asking me if I felt sorry, no," end quote. So he admits to what he did. He admits he didn't have feelings on it, and definitely no remorse.
None of those statements by Speck surprise me. I think he always knew what he was doing, and I think he simply didn't care. And I also think if he hadn't been caught, John, that he would have absolutely done this or something like it again. He was a violent criminal, and throughout this, we see an escalation. He starts with some burglary. He stabbed somebody in a bar fight, and then he's raping people. And then I think he committed at least 1 more murder before this. Mary Catherine never got justice and probably won't unless somebody's able to tie him to this. But we see this escalation into a mass murder, and I don't think it would have stopped here.
I don't think it would have stopped anytime soon if he hadn't have been caught so quickly. So thankfully he was. But yeah, this is just one of the worst situations you can imagine. These ladies just having a good time turns into the most unimaginable, horrific event that you could even fathom.
Absolutely. And it shouldn't have happened. He was given hand slap after all these horrific, violent crimes, never held accountable for what he was doing. And it's just so frustrating to see that and to know what happens later. Of course, there are people who end up straightening their lives out or never end up hurting people. But I think for situations like this, you've got to put caution above all else when giving these sentences to these violent criminals. Violence isn't something that just goes away.
Thankfully, he was never offered parole. He died in prison, so his story and evil is over. But there's many more like him out there, and I just pray that justice is handled appropriately when they do the lesser crimes, and maybe it will stop some of these other bad things from happening in the future.
And, they overturned his death sentence, and I kind of wish we could find a way almost to reverse the death sentence in that we're able to keep him alive so he can serve a 400-year sentence.
Yeah.
That may be torture. That may be overkill. That's how long his sentence was, though, so we should see him serve all that.
Honestly, he was having too good of a time. So
excellent point.
If you could, put him in solitary for all of those years, I'd be fine with that. I would also be fine with the electric chair.
And I love that this ultimately led to cleaning up the prison system to some degree. So kudos to this journalist for pointing all this out and bringing those tapes to the public. And hopefully we continue to get reform until our prison system looks like something that some of us could be proud of, because I'm not sure we're there or what it'll take to get there, but hopefully someday.
Guys, this has been a good one. Jamie, thank you for doing the research on this one. Guys, we appreciate you. If you have not already, remember we did release a new Patreon episode last weekend, and it is crazy. It is about a child abduction right here in Kentucky that Jamie brought to us. I'm so proud of you for bringing us a difficult case.
I don't think you should be proud of me for bringing up a child murder.
Well, I'm proud of you that you were the one who looked it up and found it. That's not like you.
I did do all the research on that one. This one was mostly Mackenzie, so kudos to her for that. And all the work that she does to support our show. Super grateful. And we're grateful for all of you guys as well. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review, and we will read it aloud on the show.
Guys, we love you. And until next crime, this has been True Crimecast.
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.